Flour dust hung in the air like fine snow as Owen Fletcher kneaded another batch of dough. His hands moved through the familiar motions without thought, the rhythm as natural as breathing. Outside the window, the twin sons of Dust Haven were just starting to paint the red desert in shades of copper and gold. He had been running this bakery for 3 years now, ever since he left Earth behind. The frontier colony was small, barely 2,000 souls trying to make a life on this harsh world. But people needed bread no matter where they lived, and Owen needed the work to keep his mind occupied. The ovens roared to life at exactly 5 in the morning. Owen fed them carefully, adjusting the heat until it reached that perfect temperature where the dough would rise just right. The smell of baking bread began to fill the shop, warm and comforting in the cool desert morning. That was when he saw it again. Through the window that faced the rocky ridgeline, a massive shape descended from the purple sky. Owen stopped working and watched as the creature landed on the same spot it had chosen for the past 3 weeks. Even from this distance, he could see the morning light gleaming off dark red scales that a dragon, or rather, what the colony database called a draconeer. Owen wiped his hands on his apron and moved closer to the window. The creature was enormous, easily the size of the colony's largest transport vehicle. Its wings folded against its body as it settled onto the rocks, and its long neck curved as it turned its head toward the bakery. Most people would have run. Most people would have called security and hidden in their homes until the alien predator left. Owen had seen the reports about the draconeer. Ancient warriors. Dangerous. Their entire culture built around strength and combat. Humanity had only encountered them a handful of times, and those meetings usually ended in conflict. But this dragon never came closer. It never threatened. It just sat there on that ridge and watched. Owen had noticed the pattern 2 weeks ago. The dragon arrived at the same time every morning, right when the first batch of bread went into the ovens. It would stay for exactly 20 minutes, then launch itself back into the sky and disappear toward the mountains in the west. He grabbed the telescope he had borrowed from the colony's survey office. Through the lens, he could see the dragon more clearly now. Deep burgundy scales covered its body, with bronze highlights that caught the sunlight. Scars crisscrossed its hide, old wounds that spoke of battles survived. But what struck Owen most were the creature's eyes. They held intelligence. And something else. Something that looked almost like sadness. The dragon's nostrils flared. Its massive head lifted slightly, and Owen realized it was breathing deeply. The wind was blowing from the bakery toward the ridge, carrying the scent of fresh bread across the desert. Owen lowered the telescope slowly. The dragon was not watching the bakery. It was smelling it. He went back to his work, but his mind kept returning to the creature on the ridge. What would draw an apex predator to a human bakery? The draconeer were carnivores according to the database. They had no use for bread or any plant-based food. So why come back every single day just to smell it? A customer entered just after 6:30, the bell above the door chiming cheerfully. Patricia Huang, one of the colony's maintenance workers, gave him a tired smile as she approached the counter. "The usual, Owen," she said, stifling yawn. He bagged up 2 loaves of wheat bread and a handful of sweet rolls. Patricia had been coming to his shop since he opened it, one of his first regular customers. "You look distracted today," she observed as she paid. Owen hesitated, then gestured toward the window. "You ever notice anything unusual out by the eastern ridge?" Patricia followed his gaze. The dragon was still there, though at this distance it was just a dark silhouette against the red rocks. Her eyes widened slightly. "That thing has been showing up for weeks now," she said quietly. "Some folks are getting nervous. They want to call in a hunting team. It hasn't hurt anyone. Not yet." Patricia leaned against the counter. "I served near Draconeer space during the border conflicts. Saw them in action twice. They're efficient killers when they want to be. But I also learned something interesting about them." Owen waited. "They have incredible scent memory," Patricia continued. "Better than almost any species we've encountered. Smells can trigger deep emotional responses in them. I saw captured Draconeer warriors break down, crying when exposed to scent from their homeworld. Their culture doesn't allow them to show weakness, but scent bypasses all that control." Owen looked back at the dragon on the ridge. It was still breathing deeply, its eyes half closed. "You think it's homesick?" he asked. Patricia shrugged. "Or maybe the smell reminds it of something important? Either way, that's a dangerous creature to have hanging around. You should be careful." After she left, Owen stood at the window and watched the dragon. At exactly 6:35, just as it had done every other morning, the creature spread its wings and launched itself into the air. The powerful beats of its wings sent dust swirling across the desert floor as it climbed higher and higher, then turned west toward the mountains. Owen made a decision then. He would not report the dragon to security. He would not call for hunters or weapons. Instead, he would watch and try to understand, because he recognized that look in the dragon's eyes. He had seen it in his own mirror often enough over the past 3 years. It was the look of someone far from home, searching for something that would make the emptiness hurt just a little bit less. Tomorrow morning, Owen decided he would step outside when the dragon came. He would let the creature know that it had been seen, been noticed, and maybe, just maybe, that would be enough to start building some kind of understanding the ovens needed tending. Owen returned to his work, but his thoughts remained on the lonely dragon and the mystery of why fresh bread could matter so much to a creature born for war. The colony's information terminal hummed softly as Owen scrolled through files about the Draconeer. Most of what he found was heavily redacted military intelligence or dry scientific reports. The species came from a cluster of worlds called the Sovereignty, territories marked as restricted on every star chart. What little information existed painted a picture of a warrior culture. The Draconeer valued strength above all else. They settled disputes through combat. Their entire social structure was built on dominance hierarchies maintained through constant challenges and duels. None of it explained why one would sit on a ridge watching a bakery. Owen rubbed his tired eyes and closed the terminal. It was late evening, and tomorrow would come early. But sleep felt impossible with so many questions running through his mind. The next morning arrived with the same routine. Dough prepared, ovens heated, the smell of baking bread filling the small shop. And at exactly 6:15, the dragon landed on its usual spot. Owen had planned this moment for hours. He wiped his hands clean, took a deep breath, and stepped outside into the cool morning air. The dragon saw him immediately. Its head snapped toward the movement, and Owen saw its entire body tense. The massive wings spread slightly, not fully extended but ready. It was a threat display, Owen realized. The creature was preparing to flee or fight. He raised one hand slowly, palm forward. Not a wave, not a greeting, just acknowledgement. "I see you," the gesture said. "I know you're there." For a long moment, neither of them moved. Owen could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. The dragon was close enough that he could see every detail now. The scars on its scales, the way its claws dug into the red stone, the intelligence burning in those ancient eyes. Then the dragon's head tilted slightly to one side, a gesture that seemed almost curious. Its wings folded back against its body, though the tension didn't completely leave its frame. Owen lowered his hand and took one step backward toward the bakery door. He kept his movements slow and deliberate. The dragon watched every motion with intense focus. Another step back, then another. Owen reached the doorway and paused there for a moment, meeting the dragon's gaze one more time. Then he turned and went back inside. Through the window, he watched the dragon settle back down onto its perch. Its breathing resumed that same deep, deliberate pattern, drawing in the scent of fresh bread like it was the most precious thing in the universe. Owen felt a small smile cross his face. It was a start. But the next morning, the ridge was empty. Owen tried not to feel disappointed as he worked through his routine. The dragon was a wild creature, not a pet. It had no obligation to return. Maybe seeing a human up close had frightened it away. Maybe it had found whatever it was searching for and moved on. 3 days passed with no sign of the dragon. Other colonists mentioned seeing it flying over the mountains, but never came back to the ridge. Owen found himself glancing toward that empty spot more often than he wanted to admit. That on the 4th morning, he heard the impact of something large landing nearby. The entire bakery shook slightly, and dust fell from the ceiling beams. Owen rushed to the window and felt his breath catch. The dragon had returned, but this time it had landed only 200 meters from his shop, much closer than ever before. It sat in the red sand with its wings folded tight, watching the bakery with those same intelligent eyes. This was deliberate, Owen realized. The dragon was making a choice to come nearer, testing the boundary between them. Owen went back to his work, but kept glancing outside. The dragon remained in its new position for the full 20 minutes, breathing in the scent of baking bread. When it finally left, Owen noticed it hesitated before launching itself skyward, as if reluctant to go. The pattern changed after that. Each week, the dragon would land a little closer. Other colonists started to notice and complain. Security Chief Rodriguez visited the bakery one afternoon, concern written across his weathered face. "People are getting nervous," Owen, Rodriguez said, accepting a cup of coffee. "That thing is a predator. What if it decides fresh bread isn't enough anymore?" "It's not here for food," Owen replied. "Watch it sometime. Really watch it. The dragon never looks at people walking by. It doesn't track movement like a hunter. It just breathes in the smell of the bread and then leaves." Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. "You really think it's harmless?" "I think it's looking for something it lost," Owen said. "And somehow, my bakery reminds it of that." The security chief sighed. "I'll trust your judgment for now. But if that thing makes one aggressive move, I'm calling in a response team." "Understood." Owen nodded, and Rodriguez left looking unsatisfied but willing to wait. More weeks passed. The dragon continued its careful approach, landing closer and closer to the bakery. Owen noticed details he had missed before. The way the creature's scales seemed to shimmer in the early light. The careful precision of its movements, as if it was constantly aware of its own size and strength. The almost meditative quality of its breathing when surrounded by the scent of fresh bread. One morning, Owen made a decision that most people would call insane. He baked an extra loaf and carried it outside in the pre-dawn darkness. The dragon had not yet arrived. Owen placed the warm bread on a flat rock exactly halfway between the bakery and where the dragon usually landed. Then he retreated inside and waited. 6:15. The dragon descended from the purple sky. It saw the bread immediately and froze in midair for a heartbeat before landing in its usual spot. For several minutes, it simply stared at the offering. Then, moving with surprising delicacy for such a massive creature, the dragon approached the rock. It lowered its great head until its nostrils were inches from the bread. Owen watched as the creature's eyes closed and its whole body seemed to relax. The dragon stayed there for over an hour, long past its usual departure time. It never ate the bread. It simply breathed in its scent, as if filling some deep emptiness inside itself. When the dragon finally left, Owen went outside to retrieve the loaf. It was cold now and covered in a fine layer of ash from the creature's breath. Owen held the bread carefully and smiled. They had crossed another bridge together. The change happened gradually over the next 2 weeks. Owen continued leaving fresh bread on the rock each morning, and the dragon continued its careful approach. The distance between them shrank day by day until the creature was landing just outside the bakery's front door. Other colonists gave the shop a wide berth now. Some crossed to the other side of the street when they saw the dragon's shadow. Others simply avoided the area entirely. But there were no incidents, no threats, no violence. The dragon came at dawn, breathed in the scent of fresh bread, and left peacefully. Owen found himself looking forward to those quiet mornings. There was something peaceful about the routine they had built together. Two beings from different worlds, different species, sharing a simple moment of comfort. One morning, as Owen stepped outside with the daily offering of bread, he spoke softly. "You're far from home, aren't you?" He did not expect an answer. The words were more for himself than anything else. But the dragon's eyes opened and focused on him with sudden intensity. Then a voice sounded inside Owen's head, rough and ancient like stones grinding together. "Farther than you can imagine, breadmaker." Owen nearly dropped the bread. The voice had not come through his ears, but directly into his mind. He stood frozen, staring at the massive creature before him. "You can speak." Owen whispered. My kind shares thoughts when we choose to, the voice replied. I have been listening to your words for many days now. Your language is strange, but not difficult to understand. Owen slowly set the bread down on the rock and took a step back, his mind racing. All the reports about the Draconeer had mentioned their intelligence, but telepathy was not something the human databases had recorded. Or maybe the military had kept that information classified. Why do you come here? Owen asked. What does the bread mean to you? The dragon was quiet for a long moment. Its great head lowered until it was level with Owen's, though still several meters away. When it spoke again, the mental voice carried weight of sorrow that made Owen's chest ache. The scent reminds me of home, the dragon said, of the thermal pools where my people gather, of the fungi that grow in the warmth of our breath, of safety and belonging that I will never know again. What happened? Owen asked gently. The dragon's eyes closed. I am called Wraith. I was part of a diplomatic flight sent to establish peace between your kind and mine. There are those on both sides who profit from conflict, who wish to see war continue. They ambushed us in neutral space. My entire wing was slaughtered. I barely escaped. Owen felt his throat tighten. He knew something about loss, about being the one who survived when others did not. I crashed on this world weeks ago. Wraith continued. I have been hiding in the mountains, healing, but the loneliness was becoming unbearable. Then one morning, I smelled your bread on the wind. It reminded me so much of home that I had to come closer. Why not contact the colony officially? Owen asked. Ask for help. Because I am dishonored. Wraith's mental voice was heavy with pain. In my culture, a warrior who survives when his wingmates die has failed in the most fundamental way. I should have perished with them. To return to my people now would be to face exile or execution. I'm already dead to them. Owen shook his head slowly. That's not honor. That's just more death. Wraith's eyes opened, regarding him with surprise. You survived for a reason, Owen continued. Your wingmates died trying to build peace. Don't waste that sacrifice by giving up now. You speak as if you understand, Wraith observed. Owen looked down at his flower-covered hands. I had a daughter. She died 3 years ago from an illness we couldn't cure. She loved baking. We used to work together in our kitchen back on Earth, making bread and pastries. After she passed, I couldn't stay there anymore. Everything reminded me of her. He looked back up at the dragon. So I came here, to the edge of known space, and I opened a bakery. Because the one thing that made the pain bearable was the smell of fresh bread. It reminded me of the good times, of her laughter, of the life we shared. And yet you continue, Wraith said softly. Despite the pain, Owen agreed. Because she taught me that creation helps healing. Every loaf I bake is a way of honoring her memory. Not by dying with her, but by living in a way that would make her proud. They stood in silence for a while, human and dragon sharing the weight of their losses. The twin suns climbed higher in the sky, painting the desert in shades of red and gold. Finally, Owen spoke again. Would you like to come inside? The scent is stronger in the bakery itself. Wraith's massive head pulled back slightly. I would destroy your shop. I am too large. I have a loading door in the back, Owen said. It's wide and reinforced for supply deliveries. You could fit if you're careful. The dragon hesitated. Owen could sense the conflict in that ancient mind. Trust did not come easily to a creature bred for war and dominance. But loneliness and pain could break down even the strongest walls. I will be very careful, Wraith said at last. Owen led the way around the bakery to the wide loading door. He opened it fully and stepped aside. Wraith approached with incredible delicacy, folding his wings tight against his body and moving with precise control. Inch by inch, the massive dragon eased through the doorway into the warm interior of the shop. Inside, surrounded by the ovens and the rich smell of baking bread, Wraith released a long, shuddering breath. Owen saw the dragon's eyes close and his entire body relax for the first time since they had met. Thank you. Wraith's mental voice was barely a whisper. Thank you for seeing me as more than a monster. Owen smiled and returned to his work. You're welcome to come back anytime. And for the first time in months, surrounded by warmth and the scent of home, Wraith felt something very close to peace. The bakery became Wraith's sanctuary over the following weeks. He would arrive in the dark hours before dawn and settle in the back area near the ovens. Owen would work around him, and they would talk through the telepathic link that grew stronger with each passing day. Wraith shared stories of his homeworld, of cities built into mountain ranges where dragons roost in the warmth of volcanic vents. He described the communal nests where young ones were raised, surrounded by the scent of heated minerals and growing fungi. He painted pictures in Owen's mind of his wingmates, warriors he had known for over 2 centuries. Owen listened and shared his own memories in return. He told Wraith about Earth, about cities that never slept, about his daughter who had dreamed of opening her own restaurant someday. He showed mental images of her smile, her hands covered in flour just like his, the way she would sing while kneading dough. The colonists slowly grew accustomed to seeing a dragon's shadow in the bakery window each morning. Most kept their distance, but a few became curious rather than afraid. Patricia Huang visited more frequently, and Owen noticed she and Wraith would exchange brief mental greetings. "Your friend has seen combat," Wraith observed one morning after Patricia left. "She carries the weight of difficult choices." "The border conflicts," Owen confirmed. "She doesn't talk about it much, but I know it changed her." "War changes everyone," Wraith said quietly. "That is why some of us were trying to build peace. We knew another full conflict would destroy both our peoples." Owen paused in his work. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "Why did they ambush your flight? What do they gain from continuing the war?" Wraith's mental presence darkened with anger. "Power. Resources. There are corporations on both sides that profit from military contracts. Politicians who build careers on fear of the enemy. Generals who see peace as a threat to their relevance. They orchestrated the ambush to make it look like humans had betrayed the peace talks." "But you know the truth," Owen said. "I do. But I am one dragon, dishonored and alone. Who would believe me?" Owen thought about that while he shaped the next batch of dough. An idea was forming in his mind, but he needed to consider it carefully. That afternoon, Security Chief Rodriguez visited again. This time he did not look concerned. He looked determined. "Owen, we need to talk about your dragon," Rodriguez said. Before Owen could respond, Wraith's voice sounded in both their minds. "I can hear your thoughts, human. Speak freely." Rodriguez jerked in surprise, then steadied himself. "So the telepathy reports were true. Good. That makes this easier." He turned to address the dragon directly. "I've been doing some investigating. You're Wraith of the Sovereign Guard, part of the diplomatic mission that disappeared 3 months ago. Both governments declared everyone dead." "They are dead," Wraith replied. "Only I survived." "That's what someone wanted everyone to believe," Rodriguez continued. "But I have contacts in military intelligence. There's been chatter about inconsistencies in the incident report, evidence that doesn't add up. Some people are asking questions." Owen felt a spark of hope. "What kind of questions?" Rodriguez pulled out a datapad and showed them a series of reports. The attack happened in a zone that should have been cleared by both sides. The weapons used were human-made, but the tactical patterns matched Draconeer strike protocols. It's like someone wanted to frame both species at once. "To restart the war," Wraith said, understanding dawning in his mental voice. "Exactly. And you're living proof that the official story is wrong." Rodriguez looked at the dragon seriously. "If you're willing to testify, to share what you know, we might be able to expose the conspiracy." Wraith was silent for a long moment. Owen could sense the conflict in his mind. Fear of dishonor warring with the desire for justice. The weight of survivors' guilt pushing against the need to give his wingmates death's meaning. "They died trying to build peace," Owen said softly, echoing the words Wraith had shared weeks ago. "The best way to honor them is to finish what they started." Wraith's great head turned toward Owen. "You would have me become a symbol, a bridge between our peoples. I would have you live with purpose instead of hiding in shame," Owen replied. "You told me your culture values strength. What takes more strength, dying quietly or standing up to fight for what's right?" A sound rumbled through Wraith's chest, something between a growl and a laugh. "You are wise for such a short-lived creature, Breadmaker." Rodriguez cleared his throat. I should mention that this won't be easy. You'll need to work with human authorities and Draconeer officials who might not want to hear the truth. There will be resistance. There's always resistance to change, Wraith said. But I have learned something in these weeks of hiding and healing. I learned it from a human who chose kindness over fear, who saw a monster and offered comfort instead of violence. The dragon's mental presence grew stronger, more certain. I will do this. I will testify. I will work to expose those who murder my wing and tried to restart the war. But I will do it from here, from this place that has become my new Hearthwing. Hearthwing, Rodriguez asked. Home, Owen translated, feeling warmth spread through his chest. Over the next few days, Rodriguez helped establish secure communication channels. Wraith began the slow process of reaching out to what remained of the Draconeer diplomatic corps. The responses were mixed. Some called him a coward and traitor. Others listened to his testimony with growing alarm. Evidence began to surface. Financial records showing payments between arms manufacturers and government officials. Communication logs that had been deleted but not thoroughly enough. Testimony from other soldiers who had noticed inconsistencies. The conspiracy started to unravel, but with each revelation came danger. Whoever had orchestrated the ambush would not want the truth exposed. Owen started noticing unfamiliar faces in the colony. People who watched his bakery with too much interest one evening as the twin suns set over the red desert. Wraith spoke quietly to Owen. You have given me more than shelter, breadmaker. You have given me purpose again. Whatever comes next, know that you saved my life in ways beyond the physical. Owen smiled and continued cleaning the ovens. You saved mine too. I was just going through motions before you arrived. Now I feel like I'm part of something that matters. Outside, 3 more dragons circled in the distance, coming to meet with Wraith and hear his testimony. The bakery that had been one man's memorial was becoming something far greater. The first visiting dragon landed 3 days after Wraith began his testimony. Her name was Cirith, a warrior diplomat from the Sovereign Guard. She was smaller than Wraith, her scales a deep emerald green, but her mental presence radiated authority. Owen watched from the bakery window as the 2 dragons touched foreheads in greeting, a gesture that looked both formal and deeply personal. Their mental communication was too quick and complex for him to follow, but he could sense the emotional weight of their exchange. When Cirith finally entered the bakery through the loading door, her movements were cautious. She settled next to Wraith, and her large eyes studied Owen with open curiosity. So this is the human who sheltered you. Her mental voice was sharp and clear. The breadmaker who saw past fear. His name is Owen, Wraith said, and he taught me that strength can be found in gentleness, that honor is not always measured in combat. Cirith was quiet for a moment, breathing in the scent of fresh bread. Owen saw her eyes widen slightly in recognition. The thermal pools, she whispered. It does smell like home. Over the next week, more dragons arrived. Some came to hear Wraith's testimony firsthand. Others came to verify the evidence he had gathered. A few came simply because they heard rumors of a place where Draconeer could find peace and the scent of their lost homeworld. The bakery had to be modified. The colony's engineers worked with Wraith to reinforce the back section, creating a space that could accommodate multiple dragons safely. Owen found himself baking twice as much bread as before, not because the dragons ate it, but because they found comfort in being surrounded by its scent. Patricia Huang became an unofficial liaison between the dragons and the nervous colonists. Her experience with Draconeer culture during the war helped bridge the gap, and her steady presence reassured people that these massive predators were not a threat. Never thought I'd see the day, she told Owen one morning, watching 3 dragons resting peacefully in the back of his shop. Draconeer and humans sharing space without weapons drawn. Times change, Owen replied, pulling another batch of loaves from the oven. People don't change this fast, Patricia countered. Not without something powerful pushing them. What you and Wraith have built here, it's special. Don't underestimate that. But not everyone was happy about the changes. The same forces that had orchestrated the ambush were still active, still working to prevent peace. Owen started receiving threatening messages. Anonymous calls warning him to stop sheltering the dragons. Once, he found his bakery's windows smashed, though nothing was stolen. Wraith wanted to hunt down whoever was responsible, but Owen stopped him. Violence is what they want, Owen explained. They want you to act like the monster they claim you are. We fight this by continuing to be better than they expect. The real test came during a dust storm that hit the colony without warning. The weather satellites had failed to predict it, and the massive storm rolled in during the late afternoon when the bakery was full of both humans and dragons. The wind howled like a living thing, tearing at buildings and filling the air with stinging sand. Owen's chimney cracked under the assault, and smoke began pouring into the shop. People started coughing, stumbling toward the exits. Wraith moved faster than Owen had ever seen. The dragon positioned himself near the damaged chimney and used controlled bursts of his fire breath to clear the smoke, drawing it up and out through the gap. Then he spread his wings wide, creating a shield over the entire bakery as debris began to fall. The other dragons followed his lead. They used their bodies to protect the structure, their wings to deflect the worst of the wind. For 3 hours, they held position while the storm raged, never wavering even as the sand scoured their scales. When the storm finally passed, a crowd had gathered outside the bakery. Colonists who had watched from their shelters emerged to see dragons still maintaining their protective stance over the human building. Security Chief Rodriguez pushed through the crowd, his face covered in dust. The bakery would have collapsed without them, maybe the whole street. He looked up at Wraith with newfound respect. "Thank you." Wraith folded his wings carefully. "We protect what we consider home." The incident changed everything. The colonists who had feared the dragons now saw them as protectors. Parents brought their children to meet the massive creatures, and the dragons responded with surprising gentleness. The bakery became a true gathering place, a symbol of what cooperation between species could achieve. News of the Dust Haven dragons spread throughout human and Draconeer space. Media reports showed images of humans and dragons working together, living peacefully. It was powerful counter-evidence to the war propaganda that both sides had been spreading. The conspiracy began to crumble faster. Officials who had taken bribes suddenly found their bank records exposed. Military officers who had falsified reports were arrested. The investigation expanded across multiple worlds, and everywhere it pointed back to the same conclusion that Wraith had testified to. The peace talks had been sabotaged by elements within both governments. One evening, as Owen was closing up the shop, Cirith approached him privately. "The Sovereign Council wants to make this official," she said. "They want to establish Dust Haven as the first joint colony, a place where humans and Draconeer can live and work together openly. They're asking if you would be willing to serve as an advisor." Owen laughed, looking down at his flour-covered apron. "Me? I'm just a baker." "You are the human who saw a grieving warrior and offered kindness," Cirith corrected. "You are the one who built the first true bridge between our peoples. That matters more than any title or military rank." Owen thought about his daughter, about the dream she had shared with him of bringing people together through food and warmth. This was bigger than anything she had imagined, but it was built on the same foundation of simple human compassion. "I'll help however I can," he said finally to Wraith's mental voice reaching from across the shop. "Thank you, my friend, for everything." Owen smiled. "Thank you for trusting me enough to stay." Outside, the twin suns set over a colony that was becoming something new, something better. And in the bakery, the scent of fresh bread promised that tomorrow would bring even more possibilities. 6 months after Wraith first landed on that desert ridge, Owen stood outside his bakery and watched the sunrise paint the sky in shades of purple and gold. The view had changed dramatically. Where once there had been only red sand and rocky outcroppings, now there were new buildings rising. Construction crews, both human and Draconeer, worked together to expand the colony into something unprecedented. The official designation had come through 2 weeks ago. Dust Haven was now recognized by both governments as the first joint settlement, a place where the two species could learn to live side by side. It was an experiment, a hope, a bridge built on the foundation of trust that had started in a simple bakery. Wraith landed beside Owen with the grace that came from months of practice in tight spaces. The dragon had learned to modulate his approach, to land softly enough that he no longer shook the building's foundation. "The morning bread smells particularly good today," Wraith observed, his mental voice warm with contentment. "Special recipe," Owen replied. "I'm trying to recreate that fungal scent you described from the thermal pools." Added some mushroom powder and adjusted the fermentation time. Wraith breathed deeply, and Owen felt waves of emotion through their link. Gratitude, nostalgia, and something very close to joy. "You continue to surprise me, breadmaker," Wraith said softly. More dragons began arriving as the dawn light strengthened. The bakery had been expanded twice now, with a large communal space specifically designed to accommodate Draconeer visitors. Some came for official business, others simply to experience the peaceful atmosphere that had become famous across both civilizations. Owen had hired help. 2 human assistants and, surprisingly, a young Draconeer named Taith who had expressed interest in learning about human food preparation. The young dragon could not eat the bread, but found the process of creation fascinating. "It is meditation," Taith explained to Owen one day, carefully shaping dough under his guidance. "The focus, the patience, the transformation of simple ingredients into something greater. I understand now why this place brings peace." Patricia Huang arrived for her usual morning visit, but she was not alone. She brought a delegation of human and Draconeer officials who were touring the joint facilities. They walked through the bakery with obvious interest, noting how naturally the 2 species interacted here. "This is what we need to replicate," one of the human officials said. "This atmosphere of cooperation." "You cannot force it," Sirith replied. She had become a permanent resident of Dusthaven, working as the primary Draconeer administrator. "It must grow naturally, built on trust and shared purpose." That is what Owen and Wraith created here, not through grand plans, but through simple daily kindness. The official looked at Owen, who was pulling fresh loaves from the oven. "We would like to offer you a formal position. Cultural Ambassador for Human Draconeer Relations. It comes with significant authority and resources." Owen set down the bread and wiped his hands on his apron. "I appreciate the offer, but I'm needed here. This bakery is where the real work happens. Every morning, humans and Draconeer share this space. They talk, they learn from each other, they build friendships. That's more valuable than any title. But you could do so much more with official backing," the official pressed. "I'm doing exactly what needs to be done," Owen said firmly. "I'm baking bread and keeping my door open to anyone who needs comfort or community. Sometimes the most important work is also the simplest." The officials left looking thoughtful, but Owen had already moved on to the next batch of dough. This was his purpose, his calling. He had found it in the most unexpected way, through a grieving dragon who needed the scent of home. That evening, after the last customers had left and the ovens had been banked for the night, Owen and Wraith sat together in the quiet bakery. It had become their ritual, these peaceful moments at the end of each day. "Do you ever regret it?" Owen asked. "Staying here instead of returning to your homeworld?" Wraith considered the question carefully. "I cannot return to what I was. That warrior died with his wingmates. But I have become something new, something perhaps more valuable. I have become a bridge, and this place has become my true hearthwing. Your people must miss you. Some do, but others have come here to be with me, to be part of this new community we are building." Sirith left a position of high honor to live on this dusty frontier world. Taith abandoned a promising military career to learn to bake bread. Wraith's mental voice carried deep satisfaction. "We are creating a new kind of family here, one built not on blood or species, but on shared values." Owen smiled. "My daughter would have loved this. She always believed that food could bring people together, that sharing a meal was the first step toward understanding. She was wise," Wraith said, "and she would be proud of what you have built in her memory." They sat in comfortable silence as the twin suns finally dipped below the horizon. Through the window, they could see lights coming on across the expanded colony. Human and Draconeer homes side by side. Children of both species playing together in the streets. A community growing towards something unprecedented. Rodriguez stopped by to check in, as he did most evenings. Quiet night, he reported. No incidents, no tensions. Just people living their lives. That's what success looks like, Owen replied. After Rodriguez left, more dragons arrived. They settled in their designated space, breathing in the lingering scent of the day's bread. Some shared stories with Wraith through their mental links. Others simply rested in the warmth and safety of the communal space. Owen prepared the starter for tomorrow's dough, beginning the cycle once again. Each day brought new challenges, new visitors, new opportunities to build bridges between species that had been enemies for so long. But it all came back to this: flour and water, heat and time, the simple act of creation that could comfort a homesick warrior and transform a frontier bakery into a symbol of hope. Wraith watched his friend work with deep contentment. He had come to this place broken and alone, seeking only the memory of home and the scent of fresh bread. What he had found instead was purpose, community, and friendship that transcended the boundaries of species. The scent of bread would always remind him of home. But now it reminded him of two homes, the one he had lost and the one he had found. And every morning, as the ovens warmed and the first loaves began to bake, that scent would drift across the red desert. A promise that peace was possible, that understanding could grow from the simplest acts of kindness, and that sometimes the most powerful thing anyone could do was simply to bake bread and keep their door open. Tomorrow would bring new visitors, new stories, new chances to build the future together. But tonight, Owen and Wraith rested in the warmth they had created, content in the knowledge that they had transformed grief into hope, loneliness into community, and a simple bakery into a beacon for two worlds learning to trust each other.